projects that we have started within our chapter is called CHENMA, and it stands for Collaboration in Higher Education for Nurses and Midwives in Africa. And it's driven by the African Union's objective to say the example of to complete the revitalization of higher education in Africa. It's one of the goals of the African Union. And we thought, well, this might be a very good goal to link onto, to see how we can change nursing and midwifery education within Africa. Now, when we started looking for funding originally, the first question that was asked is, so why aren't you training more registered nurses? And our point of departure was, we agree, there is a need to train more registered nurses, however you need leadership. And if you only continue training on the registered nurse level and you don't get to the advanced practitioner level, you will constantly lack leadership. So it was at one of these conferences, and it started in 2003 in Tanzania, where the University of Dar es Salaam, or University of Tanzania in Dar es Salaam, the Muhimbili College of Nursing, said to us, well, can we in Taulongdon not join hands and establish the master's programs in different countries in Africa? And it started off as the East Africa project, and it was Kenya and Tanzania mainly involved in that initiative. The reason why we thought this was going to be a very good opportunity is that for what we would find in Africa and South Africa as well, is that there's a great willingness of the developed world to come and support initiatives. But people would come in, they would do what they think they need to do, and they would be out. And then that gap in terms of really getting people to change at the ground level often lacks. This provided us with the opportunity to get South African universities involved, because we've been the leaders in nursing on the continent for quite a number of years, and we thought this would be an excellent opportunity to build capacity throughout the continent. So what we did was to set up a project, and the universities that were providing the support was called the CUs, the consortium universities, and those hosting or in need of master's degree establishment was the host universities. And we specifically decided on consortium universities because we didn't want to create that we were just providing and giving them what we thought was necessary. And you can see it's quite a lengthy list of universities that got involved in this initiative. The structure of the project was, the project steering committee headed by Professor Liana Ace. And what we did, and I do want to add in some of the aspects that one would never expect anyone to do, that really happened within this project. And that is that when we originally started the project, we had to go to the country where we had to establish the master's program to understand what their work environment was, what the clinical facilities would provide, what was the need within that country. And those visits to these countries were sponsored by the consortium universities. So it wasn't funded at that point in time. So consortium universities would sponsor, we would do the visits, do the analysis, and work with the hosting universities in terms of what their specialty area would be, for example, maternal and child or critical care nursing, and then would work with them to develop the material. And this was all done at that point in time without funding. And then, once we had the first study guides and were ready to set off, we realized that really you can't do this without money. So we ended up, once you think ambition often runs away with you, but it's good. Rather let that happen than not trying anything at all. So we ended up seeing Ford Foundation, and they gave us $500,000 as to kick off, and that set us on the road. And what was part of this whole project was whenever we went to do the teaching, as the consortium university would also do the provision of make sure that you purchase a laptop, make sure that there's internet provision, library books for that course, So providing them and working with them in terms of all the resources they needed. What was great in terms of exchange was that one of the principles of this project was that if you were teaching, or if, say for instance, we were in Tanzania and they were involved in advanced psychiatric nursing program, what we expected is that the person who was going to teach the master's program after the first round, that person had to be in the classroom, co-teaching, had to come to South Africa and visit some of our areas of expertise so that they first would have the capacity to then continue with the master's program. I think I've said most of this. We've worked on a block system, so the consortium universities would send their staff for a period of 2 to 4 weeks. The biggest challenge of this project later became how do you do postgraduate supervision for research by email. If somebody needs to get into a queue at an internet shop to get access to internet, and then they wait for like 4 hours, get to the front, and then only half an hour onto the internet, and then it's cut off. So there were a lot of frustrations. And what we had to do was to rather send somebody across to go and do a group supervision for a week to 2 weeks. So we've changed, and as far as possible, we use internet, but that's really limited in countries outside of South Africa. There you can see some of the visits we've done. Here right at the bottom is the Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital in Kenya. And if there's one hospital and university that we're almost everywhere I go in United States, and they say to me, have you been to Kenya? And I say, yes, we work with them. They say, oh, we've got an agreement with Moi University. So Moi University has received so much support from the United States, and still one doesn't always see the benefit. And I think, then one needs to look at some leadership aspects. But what is positive is that they've completed the first round of the master's program and they continue offering that. So we feel in terms of their mission accomplished. In terms of the students that's completed, and it might not sound like a lot for you who has a lot of resources in the United States, but if you think in terms of this totals, that since 2007 to 2010, 52 master students have completed, which means they immediately take up leadership position. We feel it's really been a very successful project. After Ford Foundation, of course, we were also successful in getting funding from the African Union through NEPAT, which was 3 million South African rand. But they said to us, now we want you to get involved with Francophone speaking countries. And then we started including the DRC and Rwanda. And subsequently we've received a further 3 million South African rand to expand to non-English speaking African countries, of which Mozambique will be one. We're negotiating with Chad at the moment. We've been to Niger, not very successful, so we need to find another Francophone speaking country. And that's where we have now linked with international members of Sigma. Remember, all of this is happening with members of Sigma, using the structures within Talanda. When we got to the DRC and Rwanda, of course, it's French-speaking countries. And how do we as English-speaking people do supervision in French and the teaching? And that's where we invited some of our members from University of Quebec. And they also came across and did some co-teaching.